The guard looked me dead in the eyes, grabbed his radio and said, loud enough for the entire marble lobby to hear, "We've got a situation at the entrance. Black male, doesn't belong here, refuses to leave." He said it the way men like him say things, not as a statement of fact, but as a verdict. What he didn't know, what no one in that lobby knew, not the guests frozen mid-sip over their afternoon drinks, not the bellhops who suddenly found the ceiling very interesting, not the young woman behind the front desk whose smile had gone rigid with discomfort. Was that the building he was standing in, the uniform stitched with the Meridian logo on his chest, and the direct deposit paycheck that hit his account every other Friday all belonged to me? But that's the end of the story. Let me tell you how it started. I had built Meridian Hotels without a trust fund, without the right last name, without a single person in a corner office who looked like me and held a door open at the right moment. I built it from a spiral notebook I kept under a pull-out couch mattress in a one-bedroom apartment in Atlanta, where I lived until I was 26, working double shifts at a mid-range business hotel on Peachtree, watching how everything worked, the logistics, the suppliers, the margins, the way guests decided in the first 40 seconds whether they trusted a place. I wrote it all down. Not poetry, not dreams, numbers, patterns, systems. When I finally had enough saved for a down payment on a failing guest house in Decatur, I already knew exactly what I was going to do with it. By 34, I owned 3 properties. By 41, 11, with 2 more under contract. The Meridian Grand Chicago was my 12th, a 1920s Beaux-Arts building on Michigan Avenue that I had spent 3 years and $40 million pulling back from the edge of demolition. I had stood in its gutted lobby on a February morning in year 1, looking up at the cracked plaster ceiling medallions and the raw steel skeleton beneath. And I had made a quiet promise to the building. I intended to keep it. I didn't do press. I didn't do profiles. I had watched enough black executives get dissected by the business press, praised conditionally, questioned structurally, their success always framed as an anomaly that needed explaining, to know that quiet was a strategy. My CFO, Raymond, handled the public side of things. My legal team handled contracts. I handled the buildings. I walked every property personally, unannounced, twice a year. My staff knew it happened. They never knew when. The morning I flew into Chicago was late October. The cold off Lake Michigan is not ordinary cold. It is the kind that comes at you with intention, wet and lateral and mean. The kind that makes you understand exactly why the city has the nickname it does. My assistant had booked me under the name Marcus Webb, a simple alias I had used on property walkthroughs for years. One rolling bag, a charcoal wool coat I had owned for 6 years because I liked the weight of it across my shoulders, and a black leather portfolio with the documents I needed to review with my property manager, Daniel Park, the following morning. No fanfare. No advance call to the front desk. Just a man checking into a hotel the way any man would. The cab dropped me at the Michigan Avenue entrance just after 11. I stood for a moment on the sidewalk and looked up at the facade. The restoration stonework was clean. The brass railings flanking the entrance caught the pale autumn light and held it. The topiaries on either side of the door were trimmed to geometric precision, which told me the exterior team was doing their job. I noted it in the shorthand I kept in the portfolio and pushed through the revolving door. That is when I first saw him. He was stationed just inside the entrance, a white man, broad through the chest and shoulders, somewhere in his mid-50s, with the posture of a man who had long ago decided that his physical size was a credential. His name tag read, Derek. He was speaking in a low voice to one of the younger bellhops, and when the revolving door brought me into the warmth of the lobby, he looked up. What crossed his face in that half-second was not curiosity and not alarm. It was the particular expression of a conclusion arrived at before any evidence has been considered. A settled, comfortable certainty about what he was looking at. I had seen that expression in boardrooms and bank lobbies and airport lounges and first-class cabins. I had been seeing it my entire adult life, and I had learned, out of necessity, out of the specific discipline that black men in this country learn or break under, to register it, file it, and keep moving. "Can I help you?" Derek said. The words were hospitable. The tone was a door held open the width of one finger. "Checking in," I said, neutral, and reached for my phone to pull up the reservation. "You have a reservation?" He repeated it the way people say, "Are you sure?" when they mean, "I doubt it." "I do," I said, and showed him the screen. He studied it for a beat longer than was necessary, then looked up at me with a kind of flat patience. "Front desk is that way," he said, and pointed as though I had asked for directions and not simply held open a door. I walked to the front desk. The young woman there, Priya, according to her tag, checked me in with the warm, practiced efficiency that is the entire point of a hotel at this level. She asked if I needed assistance with my luggage. I told her I was fine. She smiled, handed me the key card, and that should have been the end of it. I spent the next 2 hours doing what I always do on a walkthrough. Service elevator to the top floor, work down. I checked the hallway carpets for wear patterns. I tested housekeeping response time by calling from the room phone and timing it. I ran the shower, noted the pressure, checked the temperature lag. I looked at the toiletries, the blackout curtains, the minibar restocking schedule on the back of the closet door. The hotel was in exceptional shape. Daniel's team had kept it tight. I made my notes and came back down to the lobby around 1 in the afternoon, wanting coffee and wanting, more than anything, to sit in the space as a guest would. Not as the person who had signed every contract this building had ever produced, but as a human being who had arrived from somewhere and needed somewhere to be. I took a seat in one of the deep wing chairs by the south window. The lounge attendant came over, and I ordered a black coffee and a glass of water. I opened the portfolio on my knee and began reviewing the financials Daniel had sent over the previous week. The lobby moved around me the way a good lobby should, unhurried, purposeful, warm without being cloying. The restoration had given the space back its bones. The original terrazzo floor, the coffered ceiling lit from above by bronze pendants, the ironwork on the mezzanine balustrade that 3 master craftsmen had spent 4 months restoring by hand. I was proud of this building. I was sitting in that pride, quietly, with a cup of decent coffee, when I felt the quality of the room shift. It was not a sound at first. It was pressure. The specific atmospheric change that precedes a confrontation, the moment when someone has decided something and begun to act on it. I looked up from the portfolio. Derek was standing 8 feet away. He had not come alone. Beside him was a younger security officer, perhaps 28, whose expression was already apologetic in advance of whatever was about to happen. Derek's arms were loose at his sides, but his chest was forward, his chin was slightly lifted, and he was speaking loudly enough to be theatrical. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to move along." I looked at him for a long moment. The coffee cup was warm in my hand. At the nearest table, a couple in their 60s had stopped talking. The woman had put down her fork. "I'm a guest at this hotel," I said. "We've received a complaint," Derek said, without specifying from whom or about what, because specifying would have required a specificity he did not have. "A complaint about what?" I asked, my voice completely level. He shifted his weight. About someone matching your description, making other guests uncomfortable. The younger officer took a half step backward. I noted it. I noted everything. I've been sitting in this chair for 20 minutes, I said. I ordered coffee. I've been reading. That is the full inventory of my behavior. Sir, Derek said, and his voice dropped into something harder and quieter. The register men like him use when they want to project authority without witnesses hearing the ugliness beneath it. I'm not going to ask you again. I set the coffee cup down on the side table with a soft, deliberate click. I closed the portfolio across my knee. The younger officer had now taken 2 steps back and was looking at a point somewhere above my left shoulder. The woman at the next table was no longer pretending to eat. A man in a business suit near the elevator bank had turned around, uncertain whether to intervene or simply observe. Fine, I said, quiet as still water. Let's go to the front desk. I stood. I picked up my bag. I picked up the portfolio. And I walked, not fast, not slow, across the length of that marble lobby that I had paid to have restored, toward the front desk where Priya had checked me in 2 hours before. Derek followed 2 steps behind, and I could hear in his footsteps the specific sound of a man who believes he has won something. He had not yet understood that the walk across that lobby was the last moment of his professional life as he had known it. And I had not yet decided exactly how to show him. I was still deciding. I had learned that patience is not passivity. It is the difference between a door slamming and a vault closing. One makes noise, the other holds forever. Priya looked up from her screen when I approached, and her expression shifted in the specific way that people's expressions shift when they recognize that something is wrong and they are about to be in the middle of it. She glanced at Derek, then back at me, and her hands went very still on the keyboard. Is everything all right? She asked, and addressed the question to me, which told me something important about her. I'd like to speak with your general manager, I said. Of course, I can, she began, but Derek cut her off. That won't be necessary, he said, positioning himself slightly between me and the desk with the ease of a man who has done this before and faced no consequences for it. This gentleman was unable to verify his stay to my satisfaction. I'd like you to pull up the reservation under... He paused and looked at me with deliberate blankness. What name was it again? Webb, I said. Marcus Webb. But I'm not speaking to you anymore. I looked back at Priya. Please call Daniel Park. Tell him Marcus is at the front desk and needs 5 minutes. Something changed in Priya's face. Not dramatically. A small shift, like a card turning over. She knew Daniel's name. She knew that guests at the front desk did not typically summon the property manager by his first name. Her eyes moved to my portfolio, then back to my face, and I watched the arithmetic happen in real time behind her expression. She picked up the desk phone without another word. Derek made a sound low in his throat, dismissive and contemptuous, the sound of a man who has already written the report in his head and is simply waiting for the paperwork to catch up. All due respect, he said to no one in particular, his voice carrying easily to the guests nearby. We run a tight operation here. I've been doing this job for 11 years. I know who belongs in a lobby like this and who doesn't. The younger security officer, I had since read his tag, Joel, had gone the color of old chalk. He was standing very still with his hands clasped in front of him, and he was looking at the floor with the concentrated attention of a man trying to become invisible by sheer force of will. The couple at the nearby table had not resumed their meal. The man in the business suit near the elevators had not moved. A family checking out had slowed their procession toward the exit. The lobby had taken on the particular stillness of a room that is pretending not to watch. I did not respond to Derek. I stood with my bag beside me and my portfolio under my arm, and I waited. And in the waiting, I was aware of the terrazzo under my shoes, the original floor, which I had paid a specialist company from Florence to restore, which had taken 11 weeks and cost more per square foot than the marble in the bathrooms. I had stood on this floor 100 times during construction. I was standing on it now. I found a certain steadiness in that. Daniel Park came through the door behind the desk in under 3 minutes. He was 42, Korean-American, wore glasses and a dark suit, and had managed this property for 4 years. He was not a man who showed alarm on his face. But when he saw me, his stride changed, lengthened, quickened. And by the time he came around the desk, his expression had the quality of someone who has just understood the full shape of a situation he was only a moment ago catching the edge of. "Mr. James?" he said, and extended his hand. I shook it. "Daniel, good to see you." The silence that followed that exchange was the loudest thing that had happened in that lobby all day. I heard Derek go very still behind me. I did not turn around. "I'm sorry," Derek said, and his voice had changed registers entirely, climbing into something thinner and uncertain. "Did you say—" "This is Elliot James," Daniel said, and his voice was completely neutral, which, under the circumstances, was more devastating than anger would have been. "He is the founder and principal owner of Meridian Hotels. He owns this property. He owns the company that employs everyone in this building, including you." He paused. "Including me." The younger officer, Joel, made a small, involuntary sound that he immediately suppressed. Derek said nothing. I turned around then, because I wanted to see his face. Not out of cruelty, but because I had been told my whole life to look away from these moments, to smooth them over, to let the discomfort pass for the comfort of the room. And I had decided some years ago that I was finished doing that. His face had gone through several expressions in the span of perhaps 4 seconds. Disbelief, recalculation, the desperate search for a version of events in which he had not just done what he had done. He found nothing. His jaw worked once, like a door with a broken hinge. He started. I was following protocol. There was a complaint. "From whom?" I asked. My voice was level and quiet, the same voice I had been using since he first walked toward me in the lobby. I had not raised it once. I did not raise it now. "Give me the name of the person who complained." He couldn't. There was no name. There had been no complaint. We both knew it, and the circle of people standing in that lobby knew it, and the knowing was in the air like smoke. "That's what I thought," I said. I set the portfolio on the front desk, opened it, and slid the property overview sheet across the counter so that it lay facing him. I tapped my name at the bottom with one finger. "I want this documented," I said to Daniel. "Full incident report. Timestamps, names of every staff member present, every guest who witnessed it. I want it on my desk before our meeting tomorrow morning." "Absolutely," Daniel said. "I want Derek's employment file reviewed by HR within 24 hours, I said. "And I want a conversation with every member of the security team this week about the standards of this property and who those standards apply to." "Understood." I picked up the portfolio and my bag. Then I looked at Derek one final time, and I said the only thing left to say, quietly enough that it was meant just for him, though the silence in that lobby meant everyone heard it anyway. 11 years, I said. "And you still don't know whose house you're in?" I walked to the elevator. The doors opened immediately, as if the building itself had been waiting. I stepped in, turned around, and in the last second before the doors closed, I saw Derek standing exactly where I had left him. The overview sheet still on the counter in front of him, Priya and Daniel on either side, and Joel 3 feet behind him, looking at his own shoes. The couple at the table had finally resumed eating. The man in the business suit was walking away. The family near the exit had pushed through the door, out into the cold. The elevator doors closed. I was alone. I stood for a moment with my hand on the railing and breathed out slowly, feeling something leave my chest. Not anger, because I had not let it become anger, but the dense, exhausting weight of having to be measured and precise and controlled in a moment when every nerve in my body was screaming otherwise. The elevator rose. Somewhere between the 3rd and 4th floors, my hands started shaking. I let them. The HR review took 48 hours, not 24. The file, when it landed in my inbox, was thicker than I had expected. 2 prior complaints from guests. 1 internal complaint from a colleague, filed and then inexplicably closed without action. A pattern so obvious it was almost a diagram. Derek's employment was terminated effective the following Monday. He was escorted from the building by Joel, who, according to Daniel, kept his expression entirely professional throughout, which I appreciated. The incident report was forwarded to our legal team, who flagged it in the context of our broader diversity and service audit, something I had been pushing the board to commission for 2 years and had not, until then, been able to build sufficient urgency around. The board approved it the following month, unanimously. I stayed in Chicago for 4 days. On the last morning, I had coffee in the same wing chair by the south window, with the portfolio open on my knee and the pale autumn light coming through the glass. Priya brought the coffee herself, which was not her job, and set it down with a small, careful smile that said several things without saying any of them out loud. "Thank you," I said. "We're glad you're here," she said simply, and walked back to the desk. The city outside was still cold. The lake was out there somewhere beyond the buildings, flat and iron gray and enormous. I thought about the notebook under the mattress in the Atlanta apartment, the nights of double shifts, the years of deliberate invisibility, the accumulated weight of every lobby and boardroom and corridor where someone had looked at me and made their calculation before I'd said a single word. I thought about Derek's face in that moment when Daniel said my name. The specific collapse of a certainty that had never deserved to be certain. The coffee was very good. The terrazzo was solid beneath my feet. Somewhere in the building above me, 43 staff members were doing their jobs with precision and pride, because that is what this hotel demanded and what I had built it to demand. I finished the coffee, closed the portfolio, put on the charcoal coat. The lobby was warm and bright and exactly what I had promised it would be on a February morning 6 years ago, standing in the gutted bones of a building most people had written off. I had not written it off. I never did. The revolving door released me into the Chicago wind. I turned up my collar and walked. And for the first time in 4 days, the cold didn't feel mean. It just felt like weather.